an alkyd-based medium. Now, these two different liquids each give different properties to the paint. So I can control the consistency with the thinner, and then I can control the flexibility, the stickiness, and also the gloss, and also the leveling properties with the medium. Okay, so a lot of people, when they're learning to paint, they struggle with these concepts that you have these two different things. They always go, well, I've used them, and to me, I can't tell, I just use them, I don't know what, but just trust me, they have different properties which do different things to the paint. So I can make it more fluid with one. I'm going to need more paint than this. More paint. So basically just using 3 different pigments. And I have to mix enough for that whole area. Okay, let's color some. I'm going to put a little bit of this alkyd medium happens to have another property of being a powerful dryer. Normally I use an oil which is a very, very poor dryer. Safflower oil, which you can buy in a supermarket. And the reason I do that is because one of the reasons I like to use a knife is I can go on changing the ideas for a long time with a knife. You can't do that with a brush. With a brush, you put down the paint, you better leave it alone, or it'll just look worried. But with a knife, you can go on playing, you can scrape it off, you can change it, you can play with the shapes. And the lighting here is awful. Okay, I'm going to have to we have to bend this down, so you'll just have to go by my description of what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm going to take this knife, and all different techniques that I do. One of the most important things for the techniques is the surface that I work on. Each technique depends on the surface. This particular panel is made from the finest weave linen that Clausen's makes, glued to plywood, and it works very well for this smooth knife work. If you just took like just a standard acrylic primed cotton duck, you would find this very hard to do because it would take a tremendous amount of paint. You would not be able to control the edges. There would be all kinds of stuff. So, my favorite, even for this technique, my favorite surface is one that I make myself. That's primed with a knife, with a big, huge knife. What I do in layers. And that's a very sensitive surface that works very well with brush and also with a knife. It's very, very versatile.
It's paper?
No, it's canvas. It's linen.
Oh, okay. And you prime it with gesso?
No, with white lead, which means I have to wear protective respirator and stuff like that because it's very dangerous.
Don't do this.
But the reason that lead carbonate is a preferable ground to, this is primed with like titanium with maybe some zinc and something like that. But lead is a much more flexible material as a paint layer, and also because lead carbonate is very, very dense. Obviously, lead, one of our denser elements, one of the densest. It absorbs much less oil. Titanium dioxide absorbs too much oil, which is why it doesn't make good grounds, and yet it's the grounds that we all use. I mean commercially prepared linen. So what I would normally do is I would try and mix these 7 colors here on my palette, and I would put them right next to each other, which I'll do to show you, and see exactly what their relationship is on the palette. Because once you put them on canvas, those relationships are very, very hard to manipulate. So let me take a color like this that looks like it will totally clash with that. And what would be another color that we might introduce here? Maybe, this is a color that Old Holland makes called warm gray light. Don't know if that really says what we're talking about.
Why do you say
Like
that
yellow?
green clashes with it? Why did you say that second color clashes with the first?
Anybody know what the opposite color of green is?
Purple?
Magenta. So if I put here, I'll show you what I mean.
Because of how it lays on the color wheel.
Yeah,
Right,
the
but-
idea which we were all
I think of
taught
clashes
about
as
complementary
negative.
colors
Yeah.
is entirely erroneous. Red and green, for instance, are, we call them complementary colors.
Right.
They're not opposite on the color spectrum, they're right next to each other. In fact, our sensitive red and green have a huge overlap, so that the difference in phenomena in red and green is extremely slight. But if you take 2 colors that are really opposite and put them next to each other, the brain doesn't like it. See that? It's confusing. Creates what we call spatial ambiguity. Your brain doesn't know what to make of that. I'll make it worse. I'll take the same color in more nearly the same value. Okay, it gets worse if you have opposite colors which are the same value. Now your brain has trouble distinguishing what's in front and what's in back, and the colors will start to dance along the edge. See that? If this was 2 big areas, you would see the line bounce back and forth. Your brain, because what's happening in your eye is you have neurons which are cross-linked between the receptor. I'm sorry, I'm speaking science. And when one receptor is firing, it suppresses the adjacent one. That's how we get lines. Our concept of line is based on this happening. So you have these cells which are firing electrical signals, but they're suppressing the electrical signals next to it. But if you have 2 equally bright colors with the same amount of message, they're firing back and forth trying to suppress each other, and it's the kind of thing that makes you seasick.
Do you have to know a lot of science to be a painter?
No, you don't. But, no, of course you don't. That's a good question, though.
Well, what was it? The question?
He asked, do you have to know a lot of science to be a painter?
No.
Of course,
Sounds
originally,
like it, though.
artists and painters were the same thing, right? You'll know that Piero della Francesca, Leonardo da Vinci, Brunelleschi, they were the great scientists of their time, as well as being the great artists of their time. It was the same thing. For some reason, we don't think of that so much, but many, many modern artists have to be really good scientists. Okay, so, but I do have this green, and you see, if I put this green next to this purple, now that doesn't clash.
No.
Now, the value is almost the same, but the saturation is extremely different. Okay, this is very, very unsaturated magenta, and also there's a value difference that's very clear. So when we're putting colors together, we're trying to give each color its own personality in terms of 3 qualities, and that is 4 qualities actually. The first one is hue. The second one is saturation. That's how pure the color. How many other wavelengths are mixed together with it. The more other wavelengths that are mixed together the less saturated it is. So the more it's just one, we call that saturating the color with one wavelength. All right? The third is value, how much light does it reflect? Fourth, in this case, is scale or size. How big is that shape, that color? Okay, so those are the four. That fourth one I've already made a decision about.